Hello, chess fans. Welcome to another edition of Chess Chat, a program designed to give you, the viewer, a better understanding and an appreciation of the wonderful world of chess. I am your host, George Merijanian, Program Director of the Wachusett Chess Club, which meets every Wednesday evening from 7 to 11 in room C-199 of the McKay Campus School at Fitchburg State College. And with me is my trusty co-host, Martin Lane, one of the strongest and most active chess players in North Central Massachusetts. Welcome, Marty.
Hello, George.
Yeah, Marty, before we delve into today's topic, I'd like to bring to our viewers' attention an historic event that's going to happen in Fitchburg this Thursday, June 5th.
Right. About what time do we expect?
We at the time, well, it's going to be a live chess game.
Right.
It's going to be a game played with humans, and it's going to be played at the Upper Common in Fitchburg. It's going to start about 4:15.
So we're saying humans as pieces.
Humans will play the roles of pieces. We're going to have kids playing the roles of pawns, white and black pawns, and we're going to have adults, maybe some kids playing some of the major pieces, you know, rooks, bishops, knights, kings. By the way, we're going to have the Fitchburg mayor, Lisa Wong, playing the role of the White Queen.
Okay.
So that should be very exciting to watch that. But we're going to have a parade. Actually, these pieces are going to assemble at Fitchburg Public Library.
And they'll be in costume.
They'll be in costume. That is, you'll have actually the kids, they'll be dressed like white pieces will be dressed in white T-shirts, white pants, or khaki pads, and they'll be all dressed in costume. The pawns will have little chess hats. All the pieces will have chess hats denoting their pieces. But there'll be a parade. There'll be a parade actually from Fitchburg Public Library. The pieces will march up the sidewalk, past City Hall, up to the Upper Common. I think the parade will start probably maybe close to 4, maybe a quarter to 4. But the thing is, we're going to get this game underway at 5:15 at the Upper Common. And we actually have to thank some of the sponsors who collaborate on this, such as Rollstone Studios right on Main Street, opposite the Fitchburg Public Library. We actually have Acme Carpet One in Lunenburg, which is very generous in donating light squares, light-colored squares. We needed squares. So they're going to provide us squares to alternate with the grass, and we appreciate that. We also actually have the Fitchburg Art Museum, which is helping on this production. So this is a collaboration, but it's an historic event in Fitchburg.
Sounds pretty exciting.
Because we've never done this. This is the first time. So I'm looking forward to you and I presenting a game that should be of interest to our viewers who come and attend that and to watch the game. Well, Marty, today's subject is our new U.S. chess champion. About a week and a half ago, we had the U.S. championship ending in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And there was 24 players from around the country. Some of the top players in the country assembled in Tulsa, and they played a 9-round tournament there. There was also women who played in a separate event. There was a women's championship, but the main championship was for men and women. But there were no women playing in the main championship. And out of that 24-player event emerged a single winner, no ties. His name was Yury Shulman. He's a grandmaster. And he won it with the score of 7 points out of. In fact, there's a photo of Yury, actually probably in his late 20s, at the board. And Yury Shulman is now 33 years old. He was born in Minsk, the capital of Belarus, in the former Soviet Republic of Belarusia. And he came to the United States in 1999 to study at the University of Texas at Dallas. He received a scholarship, a chess scholarship, because the University of Texas at Dallas actually gives chess scholarships.
Now, it's one of only 2 in the country that give chess scholarships.
Yes, there is actually the University of Maryland in Baltimore, which also gives chess scholarships. But the leading school in the country, the leading university, is the University of Texas at Dallas, and they give chess scholarships. And Yury went there. He studied and graduated with a bachelor's degree in computer science, and then also earned a Master of Business Administration degree, an MBA, from the same college.
But he went on a chess scholarship.
He went on a chess scholarship, and he learned the game at the age of 6. His father taught him, And by the way, I learned something interesting about his father. His father is one of the top 10 checker players in the world. His father actually is not a strong chess player, but he certainly was good enough to teach his son the rudiments of chess. And Yury became a grandmaster at the age of 20 in 1995. The same year in which he won the European Junior Championship. So he's one of the strongest players in this country. Right now, his rating puts him at 8th in the country, according to rating.
Now, when we talk about the U.S. Championship, this is different than the U.S. Open tournament,
Yes.
which is held in the summer.
Right.
And that's an open tournament.
That's open. Anybody can play
Now,
that.
this is a closed championship. How do you qualify for the closed championship?
It's usually by rating.
Strictly by rating?
They will, not strictly by rating. They will invite players, a certain number of players by rating, then other players actually have won certain tournaments, like
Certain key tournaments like
U.S.
Foxwoods
Open, the World Open, maybe Foxwoods. You know, every year there's a great tournament not too far from us, down at the casino, Foxwoods Casino, and Yury Shulman has played there.
Right.
He's played all over the country, but he's also played the past several years at Foxwoods. So this was a crowning achievement for him this year to win the U.S. Championship, because last year he tied for 3rd. The year before he actually came in 2nd. So he finally made it. Yury Shulman is our new U.S. champion.
Now, there are a number of emigres from the countries that made up the former Soviet Union in this country.
In fact,
and Massachusetts has quite a number of them.
Well, actually, we have actually 3 grandmasters in Massachusetts, and 2 of them are of Russian extraction. They were former Russians. The Alexander Ivanov, who lives in Newton. You have Eugene Perlstein, who lives in Swampscott. And our only native-born American grandmaster who lives in Massachusetts is Larry Christensen, who lives in Cambridge. So yes, the U.S. chess scene is dominated by former Russian immigrants, Soviets, Russian immigrants. They come all over. They come all over. You know, from Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus. Yeah, so they come from everywhere. Today, we're going to present a game that Yury Shulman played in 1997.
So shortly after he came to this country.
Well, that is before he came to this country, because he came to this country in 1999. This was played in Spain, Ubeda, Spain, and his opponent in this international tournament was a player by the name of David Marciano. Sometimes the chess players referred to him as Rocky Marciano, kidding him. So this was played actually in a tournament there, and Shulman was white, and Shulman opened with e4. So let's start this game and show our viewers this interesting game.
We've opened pawn e2 to e4. We've done this many times. It occupies the center. It opens up a diagonal for the white squared bishop. It also opens up a diagonal for the white queen. It's a good opening move. One of the most popular opening moves that there is.
Okay, I agree with that. And what Marciano replied with on his first move was e5. For the same reason, that it actually opens up the diagonal for the dark squared bishop as well as the queen along this diagonal. But again, as we know, queens should not come out early in the game. We hold back on the development of the queens until much later. All right, so it's Shulman's second move coming up.
Now, the more common move at this point is for white to play the knight on g1 to f3. But a good alternative is to take the knight on b1 and play to c3, which is what Shulman did. And this is called the Vienna game. It was popularized by chess players in the Vienna, Austria area about 150 years ago, I think.
Yes,
thereabouts.
Very popular then. Back in the 1800s, this was actually it's a good move.
It's a solid move. It develops a piece. It also holds back. It doesn't block the f pawn. White reserves the right to play to f4 at some point.
All right. Well, now it's black's turn, and black actually has basically 2 good replies to knight c3. Black could play knight on g8 to f6, which is good. Attacks the pawn, but of course we realize the pawn is protected by the knight on c3. But what Marciano played was knight c6. He's just copying what Shulman's playing. So this is a good developing move.
Right, develops a move. White has a few choices. One popular one is to take the bishop on f1 and play to c4, which develops the bishop. It's on this strong diagonal here. We've seen that sort of move before. He could go into a different kind of a game and play knight to f3 now, developing a knight. He could go a whole different direction and play g3 and planning to develop the bishop to g2 if he wanted to. But what he does is, what Shulman does, he takes a really sharp approach, and he plays the pawn on f2 to f4, attacking that center pawn, but also offering this pawn. It's not protected. He's offering it up as a sacrifice, a gambit.
A gambit. All right. So he's actually saying you may have this gambit. I mean, this pawn. So so Marciano now must decide whether he accepts the gambit or declines it. Now, if he declines it, he can actually defend the pawn, which is attack, by playing the pawn up to d6.
Right. It's already defended.
It's already defended, so he doesn't have to actually defend it again.
Right.
So he could just leave it there and just continue with development. Maybe just develop actually a bishop to c5 or the knight f6. Both are good moves, but he chooses to accept the gambit. Right. And actually, there's a player named Wilhelm Steinitz, the first official chess champion, who said, if you want to refute a gambit, you've got to accept it to prove that it's unsound. So this is what Shulman played. He played e takes f4, takes the pawn. So what does Shulman do now?
Well, if you're going to give up a pawn, you have to compensate for it somehow. And the whole point of a gambit is to get your pieces out as quickly as possible and to put them on aggressive squares. And so in order to do that, he's going to take advantage of this pawn being a little bit off to the side, the extra move that black is taking. He's going to develop his knight right away, knight to f3.
Okay, so rapid development here is important. And also there's a need to bring this knight out now, because otherwise this queen could have gone to h4 with a check.
He has to defend this square.
White has to control this h4 square and stop that queen from going there. Okay, so it's Marciano's fourth move coming up, and he could again, develop a knight maybe here, or maybe a bishop, the b4. Can't play the c5 because he would actually be attacked with the pawn on d4. Right. What he does is he plays g5. Now this looks actually rather risky.
Well, it's risky, but it's got a big threat. Again, if we look at that h4 square, if black were to move and push that pawn to g4, then white would be forced to move the knight, and the queen would have this check open, and white would be on the receiving end of a tough attack.
Okay.
So white has to do something about guarding that h4 square. So he goes right after that g5 pawn. He plays pawn to h4.
Now we have a double attack on this pawn.
Right.
So now...
And the rook opens up to defend along that file.
All right. So what Marciano does on his move coming up here, on his fifth move, he plays g4, attacking the knight.
Right. Well, now the knight has to go somewhere. Right. It doesn't make much sense to have sacrificed a pawn and given black all this just to come back to a different square.
Right.
So he's going to plunge right on to g5, which is the knight's, even though it's attacked by the queen, it's protected by the pawn. So he's safe there. He couldn't go to e5 because he would be taken by the knight.
Right.
So that's really the only square he has to go to.
All right. Well, black, realizing the knight now is on g5, now plays h6, attacks the knight.
Right.
And now, can this knight retreat?
Well, now the knight can't go back because these two squares are covered by the black pawn. He can't go to h7 because the rook can take. So he goes here, it'll just be taken by one of the two pawns. So he's now going to now sacrifice his knight and take the pawn on f7, forking the queen and the rook.
Okay. So this was forced. He had no retreating.
Right. He had no place else to go.
So also black's reply is forced because of the fork on the queen and the rook. So black plays king takes f7.
Right. So and now we see one of the point of a gambit. Black has forfeited the right to castle. The king has been forfeited not into a safe corner, has to move not to a safe part of the board where these pieces are, but out into the open on the king's side.
All right.
So now white has to move quickly and take advantage of that, and so he plays the bishop on f1 to c4, checking the king.
All right. Now, in this position, to get out of a check, we either move this king or block this check. Now, if this king were to move over here to get out of this check, I can see that white's queen could simply carry it.
the pawn here with check.
And then also, on the next move, also eliminate that pawn.
Right.
Is recovering pawns.
And then this rook is...
Oh, that would be very strong. So it would be not advisable to move over here and be subjected to a check with the queen taking the pawn on g4. So what black does, he said, okay, I need to play d5, which he does, attacks the bishop, but he's willing to give that pawn so that he, with this bishop on c8, can defend this pawn on g4.
Right.
That's very important for black to defend that pawn.
So black is giving up a pawn, but he wanted, as you say, he wanted to open up that file to defend this pawn and prevent the queen taking. So white takes the pawn, bishop take pawn, check.
Right. So it's another check. Well, now it's time for black now just to move away from the check, in as much as the pawn is protected on g4. So the king is plays to g7. King g7 is black's move.
Okay, and again, keeping in mind that the whole point of a gambit is to be able to mobilize the pieces. In order to mobilize the pieces, you have to open up lines for them. And so white plays pawn to d4, occupying the center, but also opening up an important diagonal to this pawn.
Right. Now, this bishop is now threatening to regain this pawn, and nothing is to be gained. If we were to defend that with this bishop going to, say, d6, bishop protecting here, this would not be good, would it?
Well, it doesn't. It seems you could immediately just
advance
that.
Yes, and drive the bishop away, and then pick up the pawn on f4. So this doesn't. This doesn't work. A meaningless move. So what Marciano plays for his move is knight f6. He just say, I have to develop. I have to get my pieces out here.
Right.
And
in order to neutralize this attack, black has to try to develop his pieces as quickly as he can.
All right. So what did the Shulman do here?
Well, Shulman goes ahead and he takes this pawn. Bishop take pawn on f4.
So he's getting back some pawns here. I mean,
he's regaining his. He's given up a knight, though.
Yeah, he gave up a knight.
He's got 2 pawns for the knight, so that's not too bad.
And a knight is worth about three pawns.
Right.
So he's getting pawns for for the knight,
right.
And he also has pieces really nicely developed here. All right. So now it's actually Marciano's turn, and he plays the bishop, which needs to be developed, be brought into the game. He plays bishop b4.
Right.
Which pins this knight, and also we see that black's threat is actually to eliminate this bishop here, because of the pin here. He cannot possibly take back with the knight.
Well, the bishop has done its work,
right?
And it really wouldn't serve a lot of purpose to retreat it. That would give black another move to be able to develop another piece and maybe consolidate his position. So what white does, he's going to swap this knight for the bishop. He's going to play bishop take knight.
All right, so he eliminates
and he
that
eliminates
knight.
one troublesome piece. And he's also going to double up and isolate it.
Yeah, this is fourth. He has no other choice but to take. So b takes c6 is black's reply. And as you pointed out, these are double pawns. They're isolated. The worst type of pawns to have. You never want to have pawns. You want to avoid double pawns, and you certainly want to avoid pawns that are isolated from others that are double. All right, so this is a weakness, what we call an organic weakness here.
Right.
All right, so what does Shulman do now?
Black is still trying to take this pawn because the knight is pinned against the bishop. So he's going to relieve that pin. He's going to castle that unpins this knight.
All right. So now it's Marciano's move here after the castling, and what he does is he brings this rook into play. He plays rook f8. So he gets it over here. He adds protection here. This is not under attack. It could be if the bishop were removed, but now it's white's move. So Shulman now, what's he going to play here?
Now he's looking at there is a threat of bishop take knight here and take, and then he could take. He could do that.
Right.
And he does, but he's looking now that with the rook move, he's taken away a key defender of that pawn over on h6.
That rook over here was protecting here.
Yeah, it was protecting. So he's going to attack it now twice, threatening to take it with the bishop check.
Right. So his threat is to take this pawn on h6 with check, and also with this rook here. This is not a good place for the rook to be because that would go next. He puts himself in a pin, but the main threat is this attack on the pawn. Well, what Marciano does in the game, he plays the knight back to g8, The knight protects the pawn, stops white from taking that pawn.
Right.
So, all right, so he's defending.
Okay, so he's defending it. But that opens up another possibility. This is where we see the effectiveness of getting pieces out, getting them out where he can play.
Right.
Because by forcing black to defend that way, he now opens up another possibility by moving the bishop to e5, check.
Okay, so we have another check.
And the king can't go over because now this file is opened up.
Because white controls this F file. So what Marciano did was just simply move the king away from the check, out of the check, plays king h7. All right, so now it's Shulman's move.
Now, and if we look at Shulman's position, now the back rank is open. The two rooks are connected, we call them.
Right.
There's nothing in between. So what he can do, he can make an advantageous exchange here. He can exchange the rook on f8.
Okay. Which forces black's next move, which is queen takes f8.
Right.
Although he could actually recover that rook with bishop takes f8. That was a possibility.
That's a possibility.
But he chose actually to play this and maintain this pin on this knight. So he plays queen takes f8. All right.
And now Shulman can bring his second rook into play to f1, threatening the queen. Now the queen's going to have to move again.
All right.
And the question is, where's he going to go?
Well, the queen actually plays queen e7 because
queen has to keep an eye on that square.
Right. We have to actually control this square, so the rook is not allowed to go down here. Yes, it would. Yes. So we must actually protect the square. The queen does it.
Right.
All right. So now what does Shulman do here?
Okay. In a position like this, you're always looking for possibilities and for building up pressure and build up complications. So what he does, he moves his queen up to f4.
Okay. All right. So now he definitely controls this file. All right. So what Marciano does, he plays bishop e6, which further controls this key f7 square, and also threatens to bring the rook over here, attacking the queen and forcing exchanges here.
Right.
Because actually, remember, the bishop and the queen are protecting the square. So, yeah, he could certainly, think of this as a reply. All right, so it's White's move, Shulman's move after, it's actually, whose move is it now? I'm trying to think now.
Queen just went to e7, so it's Shulman. No, the bishop went to e6.
Right, bishop. So it is Shulman's move. Right, bishop e6.
So then he finds kind of a surprising move, knight to d5. You wouldn't think that this square was available because it's protected by the pawn and the bishop. You wouldn't think that would be a good square.
Well, wait a minute. He's offering actually this knight to the pawn.
Right.
Well, first of all, let's show that he cannot take this knight with the bishop. If he were to take this bishop takes d5, that would be a blunder.
Right.
Because actually he would get mated.
It would be checkmate immediately.
Right. Queen f5, checkmate. There's no way to block. The king cannot go to h8 because the bishop controls that square. So that would be a blunder, leading to checkmate. How about actually if he took actually with the pawn? What if the pawn on c6 took the knight on d5? What would actually he do next?
He could take here.
All right. And now he's attacking the bishop again. And again, once again, this bishop cannot take that pawn.
For the same
reason. Right. All right. So and actually he's threatening to get that bishop. That bishop cannot go back here, this f7, because the queen
takes, check.
All right, so there's a big problem. Right. So let's go back to this position. The knight is on d5. So what he does, because of this pressure, this key square that has to be defended, what he does is he plays bishop d2. That's what Marciano plays, bishop d2.
Since the knight is attacking the black queen, he's going to in turn attack the white.
And he wants to deflect the queen from this, and then he'd be able to take this knight.
Right.
All right. So now what does Shulman do after bishop d2?
Well, he could take the queen and queen take, but that would really lead to maybe a good game, but it's not as effective.
Right.
He might be somewhat better, maybe not. It's hard to say.
Well,
but what he does is he comes back and he takes this bishop.
Queen takes d2.
Queen takes d2.
Okay, so it's 20th move coming up for black, and now black says, well, thank you. I've deflected the queen from this f file. Now I can take c takes d5, which he does. Okay.
So now the queen comes back up to f4, renewing that same threat.
And control, yes, right, and actually controls the file, because
Right.
if the queen stayed here,
Then the
this,
rook could
this rook can move over here.
But now it would be lost.
Right, yeah, this would be not good. So now this queen really dominates the file with the rook. All right, so now this is what, it's Marciano's move after queen f4, and he realizes this is a threat. E takes d5, once again attacking this bishop, and this bishop cannot take this pawn, so he just says, okay, I'm going to reinforce this pawn on d5 with c6.
So Shulman goes ahead and takes the pawn on d5, e takes d5.
Okay, and Marciano has to take back with the pawn because he can't take with the bishop. There's still checkmate here on f5, so he takes d5. All right, so now we got the 23rd move coming up.
Right. And Shulman still has one more resource to throw at that. He can play c4, and white again can't take the pawn for the same reason.
That's right. If this pawn were taken,
then the queen simply slides
goes
over to
here.
e4, checkmate again.
Yeah, well, actually, he could block it with the bishop, but it would definitely be checkmate. So c4 is a very strong move. All right, so what he does is he plays queen d7. That's Marciano's move. He plays queen d7. Now what does Shulman play?
Let's see.
Does he do anything with this pawn?
He moves pawn to h5.
All right. Because now this actually stops any king from coming out here.
The king can't
this
escape.
king can't move. This king now is trapped here. All right. So what does Marciano do after h5? Well, he plays actually a bad move. Actually, he has no good moves. What can he do?
Right.
But he plays this move. He wants to get this knight into play here. So he plays knight e7. So what does Shulman do here?
Shulman comes down, puts the queen on f6.
All right.
And he's threatening mate here
on g7.
On g7.
All right. So that square must be defended, and the only piece that can do that is to bring the rook from a8 over to g8, protects the square. Right. All right. So now how does Shulman continue?
Well, he's got a sort of surprising move. He can just simply play queen to f7.
Oh.
Check.
He plays the check. The king can't move, the rook cannot block because of the mate, and also he's offering the queen to the bishop, but that doesn't work because on bishop takes f7,
then the rook comes down, and check. All right.
Is this going to work? And does he block here? Oh, well, he does this, yes. He would block this way, rook g7.
Right.
Then we actually
takes rook, check.
Check. Now this is the only move he has is king back to h8.
He can come back here, check.
Check. And now the king has to move. The king only has one move here.
And then the queen goes.
And this is clearly one game.
Right.
He's got two pieces ahead with all these pawns here. So what Marciano did was resign in this position with the bishop. We'll put back to the position here. The queen came back with a check. This is like this. Oops, sorry. And let's put a bishop on e6. The rook is here on g8. And we got this. All right, so the last move is queen f7 check, and Marciano saw the continuation. He says, I've had enough, I resign. All right, so that was quite a tactical game. By the way, this actually Vienna game, this gambit was played, it has a name. It's known as the Hampe-Allgäu gambit, named after Karl Hampe, who was an Austrian player, and Johann Allgäu, who was a German. And they came up with this, more than like 150 years ago. It's a very tactical type gambit.
Right. Not seen too often in modern play.
It's not for the faint-hearted,
No.
So anyways, I hope you certainly enjoyed it. I enjoyed going this. I hope our viewers enjoyed seeing this. And I just want to remind our viewers, again, about this historic event which is happening in Fitchburg this Thursday, June 5th, at the Upper Common. We're going to have actually a live chess game. Humans will play the role of pieces. It'll start around 4:15 this Thursday. There'll be a parade of the chess pieces from the Fitchburg Public Library up the sidewalk, past City Hall, up to the Upper Common, and it should be exciting. And I hope weather is good for us, because actually I think the plan is, if it's inclement weather, we may actually go to the Senior Center and perform the whole production there on Thursday. This is part of Mayor Lisa Wong's first Thursday celebrations. I hope you all come down to downtown Fitchburg and enjoy this historic event on Thursday, June 5th at the Upper Common. See you next time on Chess Chat.